I'm not the only spokesman for the fence. The only spokesman for DPC.
Just goes on the spot. I think having come from the kind of side of being in a DPC member organisation before I started working with DPC, it's given me kind of an interesting perspective of it. And I think one of the reasons it's been so much more successful than similar organisations in other countries is because of the words that you guys have mentioned already, benefits, and the focus on the member benefits and the members driving what happens. Whereas I've always got the impression, particularly in Leicester, that they're more about telling people what they should be interested in, rather than listening to what the members want and listening to what work they are doing and how they can be supported.
Actually, we work quite hard to have no ideas of our own.
At least we give their ideas.
It's a fundamental recognition, though, that the great ideas are in the community, in a way, and it's not our job to tell everyone what to do.
So, the other point that I wanted to come on to from that was there was a word that I noticed in some brochure you had recently that really resonated with me, and it was the word resilience. And one of the big failures that we've actually had in digital preservation is that we constantly talk about trying to make digital materials sustainable, as though we have to somehow act to manage them, instead of saying, we want to make digital entities that have the capacity to recover, that have the capacity to respond to environmental change, whether it's operating system change or and I have to say, I've been using stopwatch on my Apple phone to keep me from talking too long, that our failure to convince Apple that they need to allow for people to be able to run one phone, one operating system on the phone, and the same pieces of software over multiple periods of time is a real failure on our part. Because basically these are great examples of digital preservation failure in every aspect of it. Because, for example, if you use a banking application on here and you don't upgrade, you all of a sudden can't get access to your banks anymore. So anyway, it's a little microcosm of a problem. Right?
Does that not mean that we have to work to convince the vendors there's benefits in doing that? Because at the moment there's no benefit in doing that. There's benefit in selling the objects, and there's benefits in reducing the time to buy more objects. So we're got to kind of find that clever middle ground or something.
It's a very, very complicated ecosystem that we'll be playing in, but we need to do something with more of these vendors, more of these developers, to get them to think more about resilience in the software for over time.
So, perhaps I could open up the audience. I see Joy Davis in the back there from DCC.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you've said so far. It's all been very, very good. So I think your point about the sustainability and the costs and the benefits, I think that's correct. And I think one of the things we struggled with is who's going to pay for all of this. And we can't decide who's going to pay because we don't know who's going to get the benefit.
Yeah.
So I think there's kind of a chicken and egg thing. We have to work harder to get the benefits before we make the case to people who will pay for this and make it sustainable.
Yeah.
But it will be multiple stakeholders, and they will all have slightly different parts to cover. But we do need the risk and the sort of reverse benefits to go with them.
I think that's true. I mean, a generation ago or a century ago, the answer would have been to turn to government, for that. And there are two reasons why that's not going to work. One of them is the very obvious political and financial crisis that we find ourselves in, and no government is going to take on any kind of liability like that at this point. But moreover, actually, this is an internationally based issue, and the solution to the Apple question that Seamus asked isn't going to be found in the UK or uniquely in the UK and in the way that the UK operates. It has to be an international thing. And the real platforms for international collaboration then are maybe coming back to that as a problem, because the kind of influence we need to exert, DPC cannot influence those companies. It's as simple as a full stop, because these companies operate completely outside of our spheres of influence. And it's typically that whole Google Dark Age thing, after years of trying to persuade the Beat to run something positive and upbeat about digital preservation, Pallav Ghosh gave them the full 48 hours of a news cycle to talk about the digital dark age, interviewing loads of people in San Jose. I'm just saying, you can get a better story about digital preservation in Glasgow than having to go to San Jose. I wonder why you might want to go there in February though, rather than come here.
To be fair, there was a Seamus Ross on BBC.
There was, that's right. You were on the PM.
Eddie Mayor. So, and I did play up all the great work that happened in Glasgow in that. But what I really was trying to play up was the fact that Vince Cerf, he's late in the game. He doesn't see what's going on. He doesn't see the possibilities for collaboration with the rest of the research and memory institution community. And he's proposing a solution from the outside to a problem that I don't believe he actually has any comprehension of. That's a terrible thing to say about one of the pioneers of the internet.
So we've heard a little bit about the successes and what has not worked. As often what has not worked is far more entertaining than what has worked. But it's interesting we didn't focus too much on the disasters, as you said. Let's not talk about the individual disasters. Are there any other contributions from the audience in terms of what they might view as successes or what they might view as dreadful failures? Perhaps as students, what you think we don't know about?
Just from a background in science, I think one of the things that's been quite interesting is quite a few scientists are highly motivated by preserving data. There's been this big shift to get data preserved also to make it citable. And we love to have things that are citable. So it seems that preservation has been driven by self-interest. So they look after your data, and your data is citable thing that you can use for it. So it becomes instantly kind of useful. So I guess that addresses the issue of how much preservation is just in case. Whereas in this case, there's a very proximate reason for doing it. Somebody else might use that data and play with that and give it credit. So I'm thinking of things like Zenodo, which is based in CERN, I guess, and clinical data driver. So those are pretty kind of discrete chunks of preservation that scientists are pretty engaged with.
And if I can, for a moment, broaden that out a little bit, because I think your point about citation is important. But one of the areas where, again, I think about these slowly developing ecosystems. But the economy does include data site, it does include cross-ref, it does include a variety of relatively small but relatively, I think, strategically important services which allow for citation, not just of scientific data, but of other types of online resource, and that's actually been a major step forward. I mean, the business case behind those organisations is slightly potty, I grant you, because it works as long as we pay for it. But maybe Joy has a better answer of how we do that. I mean, it's something we ponder.
I just wonder, is sustainability a benefit for everyone? I'm just wondering about who stands to gain from either a lack of sustainability or from actions which lead to less sustainability.
My guess is that all the wrong parties gain from there not being sustainability.
Yeah.
And those parties which gain are, they're germs and infections and cancer. They are politicians deleting their own Twitter feeds. They are, criminals getting away with things that don't want to be detected because cybercrime becomes undetectable. Those are the people I think that gain, if you like, from data loss. Digital preservation, digital curation comes with tights and a cape. It's a really important thing. We need to address it because the forces, if you like, or the outcomes without it are potentially very serious.
And on the other side, taking the science example, preserving lots of these data sets and making them interoperable makes it possible to make new kinds of discoveries that you might not have expected. And the rise of data science is a really big growth area. For a long time in the future. But also looking at it from a policy perspective, not just science, but also the vast amounts of social science data that's created and being able to utilize that, watching change over time, is going to have big policy and therefore social benefits.
I was thinking that the greatest obstacle to sustainability is change. But change for archaeology is a fact of life, it's a contingent event. But is change in what you say, the digital methodology. Is that contingent? Or are there agencies involved who benefit from it?
Well, you know, I'm going to put it another time. I don't think change is a bug. You know, change is inherent in the systems that we have, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I also think data loss is not a bad thing. You know, in fact, if there's not a little bit of data loss, then we're going to have some problems in the future. And if we didn't have a little data loss in archaeology, then what would be rotten the Romans? We wouldn't be able to move for them. They'd be everywhere. So a little bit of data loss, in fact, quite a lot of data loss, is going to be really useful. But what I'm not talking about there is managed and strategically thoughtful deletion rather than coincidental, discovering too late, very expensive re-engineering of data sets which turn out to be vital. Let's not leave it to chance, I suppose would be the kind of, to boil it down to a slogan of some description.
So perhaps, Bill, one of the problems that we really failed to get at is the widespread understanding of the process of selection and appraisal, and developing techniques to support appraisal in the digital environment, and anything other than a very, very manual or very minimal interventionist, automated kind of way. We need much more sophisticated appraisal techniques. Can you work on that?